Harry Mack is bringing his rack to beat Sapnap at chess. That would be my guess. What is up, everybody? This is Anna Cramling, and I'm so excited to tell you that today, the 29th of August, marks the day that PogChamps 4 starts. And in this edition, we have a new set of participants that are going to be playing chess against each other every single day. And we are going to be following those games in this channel. So I'm going to be making a little PogChamps 4 YouTube exclusive series where I go through the most exciting games of this tournament. And I mean, Harry Mack is absolutely amazing. And I just kind of wanted to see how his freestyling at chess would be. So we're gonna be analyzing his games today. He played against the famous YouTuber and streamer, Minecraft YouTuber and streamer Sapnap, famously known for being part of the Dream SMP. So let's just jump right into it. Or actually, before we jump right into it, I mean, people, if you think that chess is a 2000-old game, like, just listen to this, just get some chess beats up, like, however that sounds, and just listen to Harry Mack freestyling about chess. This is a pure masterpiece.
I made a lot of mistakes, got messed up as we moved towards the finish. A lot of my big pieces straight got diminished. Was hoping I could win this, but didn't have the skills.
Chess can do this to Harry Mack, chess can do lots of amazing things to you. Alright, let's go ahead and get right into the game. This was the first game that Harry Mack played against Sapnap. Harry Mack, who I think seems to be pretty new to chess, has 276 in rating. Sapnap is actually like he's a pretty experienced chess player, I would say. He won PogChamps, which was this tournament organized by Bodis Live for Minecraft streamers. He won that tournament, kind of crowning himself as the best Minecraft streamer chess player. So this is definitely going to be a tough match for Harry Mack, but it was definitely an incredibly exciting match. So everybody, the first game that they played, Sapnap started with the white pieces, and Sapnap is a bit of a London player, as you guys can see here. D4, D5, bishop f4 was the move of choice by Sapnap, which leads typically to a London. So bishop f5 was the response of Harry, and this is not like a very common move, but it makes a lot of sense to get the bishop out, even though typically you get, one of your knights out first. But e3 was played, and this is to go for the London setup, e3, c3. Idea of the London for white is basically to just have a really strong protection of the center, have a strong bishop, get the pieces out fairly quickly. Knight c6 was played here by Harry. Typically, you don't really want to get this knight to c6 because a lot of times you want to be able to push this c pawn as a way of breaking the center. Especially when there's a bishop on f4, it becomes very hard to at any point be able to break in the center with e5, which is why you typically want to break with c5 instead. But I guess that maybe he had some ideas of going knight b4, knight c2. I can see that being the case. But bishop d3 was played and e6 was played, which I mean makes sense to protect this bishop. And now bishop takes f5, pawn takes f5 was played. So we can see that now the pawn structure has changed. There is a double pawn here, which typically is considered to be bad. But at the same time, it's not that bad because these pawns actually hold the center together. And they're actually stopping white from at any point be able to advance with e4 or white breaking the center at any point. So actually having a setup like this is not too bad for black. c3 was played, very common London move. This is the setup you go for. Knight f6, Harry getting his pieces out. Knight d2 was played, the only place where the knight can go to. You don't really want to go to a3. You don't want to put your knights on the rim, and also it can be taken there. So bishop d6 was played. It makes a lot of sense to exchange this bishop for this f4 bishop, even though you know, white's or black's pawns are in light squares, and white might think that, oh, this bishop might be strong because of that. This bishop is actually having a really great diagonal. It makes a lot of sense to one exchange this bishop, which is not that active, for this very active one. So bishop g5 was played here, and typically you don't really want to go for two moves like this in a row in the opening already. But he didn't want to exchange bishops, and he wanted to pin the knight and keep the pressure going. So castles was played, and you know how I told you 2 seconds ago that e4 was not going to be able to be played after this setup with d5 and f5. Well, let me tell you, everybody, e4 was played. E4 was played here, and there's a few issues that there's a few things that are a problem with this move. The first thing, of course, is the fact that when you go e4, what is going on is that you're giving a free pawn, right? Both of these pawns can take it. But the second thing is that you don't really want to do a break like this when your king is still in the middle of the board. This king is very vulnerable. You want to be castle and have your pawn protected before you do something like this. And you know, Harry, he just took the pawn. He knew what was going on. He said, Sap, I gotta take your pawn, you know. And now f3 was played, and this kind of continues with what I was saying, that you don't really want to break your center when or break your king side protection and center, like open the whole position up when the king is still in the middle, because then there's no place for the king to run to. The king can't run here right now because there's a queen, and the king can't run to the other side because there's a knight. So the king actually cannot really do anything. And if, for instance, I mean, Harry played a really good move, which is to go rook e8. Harry could also have started with taking this pawn, but going rook e8 is actually a fantastic move, just putting the rook on the same file as the king. And now there's the threat of taking on f3 with check. So what happened was that Sapnap decided to take the pawn on e4, and now pawn takes e4 would have made a lot of sense. D takes e4, but a move that that Harry played, which was actually a really strong move as well, was to go h6. And now you may, you know, ask yourself, what is the idea of h6? As there are some e5 ideas, but the idea is basically that after something like takes, and for instance e5 here, you're basically just going to be able to take here, and the king is so incredibly vulnerable in the center because of the fact that it can't castle anywhere. There's gonna be so many different checkmate ideas, like knight d3 here is a threat because of all of these discovered checks. Knight f3 is a threat too. So there's actually never this e5 idea. And you want to get this bishop out of this diagonal because then you can take here with the knight. So it's something like bishop h4, g5, and bishop g3, then you're gonna be able to take this pawn. So you're eliminating this bishop that is basically pinning the knight and stopping the knight from taking here. So h6 was a fantastic move, and now Sapnap went for this e5 idea. And this was really not that easy to know what to do, but Harry played this fantastically. He decided to take with the knight. Probably would have been better to take with the bishop because there are more checks with the knight, as I showed you before with knight d3 and knight f3. But there's not really anything that's wrong with taking with the bishop, or with taking with the knight first. You should have taken with the bishop. There's nothing really wrong with taking with the knight first. It's just that it would probably have been easier to play if he would have kept the knight. So takes and bishop takes was played, and here also comes the issue. I probably should have gone for rook takes in this position, because after rook takes, he would just have been getting this piece back. After something like knight e2, then this piece would just have been able to be taken by either the pawn or the rook. So, but it makes sense to take with the bishop. It looks really good to do it. The thing here is that now, actually, white has the option of taking on f6, which looks strange because it's not really protecting the king in any way, but it's exchanging the piece that was under attack for a safe piece. And after, for instance, bishop takes, there's not really that much going on. Yes, there's a check, but after something like knight e2, it's not that obvious how black wins on this spot. But Sapnap decided to go bishop e3 instead. And here there would have been a fantastic move, which was to go bishop f4 just to pin this bishop. The bishop is then threatened by both the rook and this bishop. But Harry didn't see this and he went for rook c8 instead. Probably trying to go for something like c5. He still has this great position, but he's probably going to have to be to see bishop f4 at some point if he's gonna make the most out of it. So knight f3 was played here. Once again, bishop f4 was an option, but queen d6 was played instead. And now Sapnap simply just castled. And here there was actually, it was once again not that clear what could be done. There are ideas of going bishop takes h2, knight h2, and then taking here because then you win a pawn, but it's not really that clear that you get that much out of it apart from that pawn. So he went for b6, probably wanted to keep this pawn safe, but here the issue is that there's actually now all of these type of ideas. If knight takes e5, white has their own threats. And if rook takes e5, there's bishop f4 with a pin. If queen takes e5, well, then there's going to be bishop d4. And then all of a sudden, this bishop is an incredibly strong piece, threatening the queen, threatening to exchange itself for this knight. Lots of different threats going on. So, but he didn't take here. He went for queen a4 instead, kind of putting his queen on the queen side. And now rook e7 was played, probably because he wanted to double up over here. But now once again there's this knight takes e5 idea. Queen takes a7 was played. You typically don't want to take pawns that are not really doing anything. You typically don't want to take, I mean, it depends on the piece, but this pawn on a7 was just chilling and not really doing that much. So typically you wouldn't want to do that, take a pawn like that. And I'm trying to rhyme, but I know my singing is a rhyme in comparison to Harry Mack, because next to him my voice is quack. Knight e4 was played here, and the idea of knight e4 is probably simply just to go for an exchange. But here after something like knight takes, pawn takes, and once again knight takes e5, this is still a really great position for white. Once again, this bishop is the monster of everything. But this was actually everything that was played. Queen e6 was played here, and queen b7 was the move here. And we can see how things all of a sudden just changed, because what Sapnap didn't realize was that at this point Black had this threat of c5, which is a move that both attacks the queen and attacks his bishop. So it's an all-purpose move, and especially now that this rook is protected. So, but rook d7 was played unfortunately instead, which led to a gambit, which was a rook gambit. So yeah, a rook gambit happened here. And Sapnap saw it and immediately took the rook. Queen takes c8 was played. And yeah, very unfortunate way for Harry to lose a rook. King h7, rook a1, bring the rooks to his center. b5, queen b7, getting the queen out. Queen e8, took the pawn. f6, queen c6, f5, pushing the pawn, but the pawn can be taken. The pawn is pushed on e3, trying to get some type of counterplay, but everything is just being taken. And we can see that after a few moves, Sapnap won this game. Everything starting with everything starting with that with blundering that rook blunder. But this was actually a fantastic game by Harry. Like, this being a 200 player, I cannot believe. I mean, all the way up until I would say this point, these first 14 moves were absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's actually hard to describe how fantastic these moves were. So this was definitely really great. The first mistake was probably rook c8 and not seeing this, but Harry definitely had his chances in this game. And in PogChamps, we play a 2-game match. So we're now going to go ahead and see also how the second game went. And here we have the second game. So they switched colors by the second game. Harry was now playing with the white pieces, and he went for an e4 game against Sapnap. No d4 over here. By the way, people, this is like an history old kind of question. Like, I can imagine people in the 1500s just, you know, running around asking themselves if d4 or e4 was a better move. But I'm gonna ask you too, do you prefer d4 or do you prefer e4? So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and he actually played a Scotch, Harry, and I don't know who's taught him the Scotch, but it's actually pretty, I think it's always pretty cool to see these people playing like all of these different openings. And Sapnap was definitely not ready for a Scotch because he went for f6, and there's kind of like this little thing in chess where you kind of, you know, you don't really want to bring your f pawn out so early on in the game typically, because what happens is that once again you're weakening your king. Everything about chess is as simple as it's about the king. Even though all the other pieces are doing all the moves and doing all the work for the king, it's about the king at the end of the day, and you got to protect the king, and a move like this just doesn't protect the king. So that is the issue with f6 right now. There is nothing immediate, but at some point it's gonna be a weakness. So bishop c4 was played. Fantastic move, trying to take care of this whole diagonal, which is the diagonal in front of the king, which is the weak diagonal. And bishop d6 was played. This move is a bit strange. In a way it's good because it protects his pawn, but you don't typically want to put your pieces in front of your pawns because that blocks the exit of other pieces. Once again, this bishop wants to get out, and you typically want to be able to get it out through this diagonal. You could go b6 and get it out through this diagonal, but typically you want to get it out in this one. So especially because there might be a block of pawns here, and then this bishop is not going to do much here. So it's a bit, you know, perhaps different to put the bishop on d6, but that is okay. So castles and then bishop b4. And here I think that we can see that Sapnap probably realized that he made a mistake by going bishop d6 and wanted to get the bishop to a more active square. And here white went for knight c3. But actually at this point there was this idea that white could go for, which was to take this pawn on e5. And after pawn takes, to go for knight g5 here. And the idea of knight g5 is simply that there are threats of both knight f7, especially of knight f7, but perhaps also of bishop f7 check. And there aren't that many ways of protecting this. I mean, if queen e7, there's just going to be knight f7 and white is winning the rook. So you might be able to go knight h6, but actually after knight h6, there's queen h5 check, and you cannot really go g6 because then you lose this piece, so you gotta go king f8. And then after king f8, there's actually this fantastic move, which is knight f7. And after knight f7, if knight takes, then there's going to be queen takes, that's a checkmate. And otherwise, you know, there's all of these threats. If queen e8, stopping the knight from taking the rook, then we take this other piece, and this is just gonna be a complete disaster for black. So this is d takes e5 was actually a very, very, very a very good move that could have been played, but it wasn't played in the game. Instead, knight c3 was played. Also, you guys might wonder what happens if knight takes at this point, but the idea is basically that after it takes and takes, there's going to be queen h5 check. Then g6 is going to be one of the few moves, but then we're going to be taking here and then taking the rook. So that's the idea. So knight c3 was played instead, and then Sapnap decided to take it and just get rid of that bishop that's been running around the whole board. d6 was played, and then d5 was played, just kicking the knight away. Knight a5, which is a good move, just threatening the bishop, asking where the bishop is going to go, and queen d3 was played, protecting the bishop. Knight e7, getting the pieces out, rook e1, and c6. And c6 is not typically like a move that you want to make, because what happens after c6 is that this pawn here is going to be weak for the rest of the game. So if at any point takes this, and we add some rooks over here, then this pawn all of a sudden is going to be very weak. But h3 was played here instead. Probably would have been good to take it already before, just that pawn would, like, this file would be open for the rest of the game. Because as we can see, after c takes d5 and e takes d5, now white doesn't have the option of taking that pawn anymore. So knight takes c4, queen takes, and bishop f5, getting the bishop to a more active square. And now black is slowly but surely getting all of their pieces out to the right squares. Black is playing well. Rook e2 was played here, probably because he wanted to double up his rooks again. Rook c8 makes a lot of sense, threatening the queen. Queen b3, queen a5, putting some pressure on this pawn. Bishop d2, defending the pawn, but also looking at some c4 pushes maybe at some point to threaten the queen. Knight takes d5, that's a free pawn. But now c4, and at this point, actually, might look as if white is winning a piece because this bishop is looking at this queen, is threatening the queen, and this pawn is threatening this knight. But at this point, there's actually a move that stops those threats. And that move, pause the video if you want to, 1, 2, 3, boom, is to go queen a6, because now you cannot take this knight because then this rook is hanging. But in this position, everybody, Sapnap did what we call, and what the internet calls, and what Botus calls, a Botus Gambit. And what is the Botus Gambit? Well, the Botus Gambit is when you give a free queen. And Sapnap gave a free queen, truly in Botus Gambit style. Now, I don't know if Sapnap was coached by the Botus. But knight f4 was played here, and at this point, there is a free queen. But unfortunately, and something that, I don't know, I feel like the Botus Gambit has a sort of magic over it. Like, you know, people just don't see it. But yeah, but the queen is hanging here. But Harry didn't take it. He went rook a e1. And immediately after, Sapnap saw it because he went queen b6. And after queen b6, taking would have been a fantastic choice to win a piece for Sapnap, or for Harry, because we can see that pawn takes is not possible because of this pin. But queen a3 was played instead, and then there was an exchange, and then rook takes c4 was played. Queen c1, e4, attacking this knight. This is now a fantastic position for Sapnap. He's playing it very well, taking everything, pushing in the center, just looking great. I mean, white doesn't have that many options. Knight h4, and then queen b5 was played here, protecting that bishop. a3, castles, bishop f4, rook d8, defending this pawn, king h1. Even though it might seem as if g5 might be a move here, it's not really that big of a threat, because you always have knight takes f5, so you're actually not winning a piece. So g5 was played, and knight takes f5, queen takes f5, g3, and this is a mistake, because now this bishop is hanging. The bishop had to move somewhere else, and Sapnap, he doesn't forgive. He takes every single piece that he can take. Rook d2 was played. Probably would have been better to take here, just to at least open up the g file and try to get some threats towards that king. F takes g3, king g2, getting that king up. This rook is defending on f2 though, so there isn't really anything. G takes f2. Rook takes f2, everybody, threatening the queen. And people, do you think that it's possible to have 2 Botus Gambits in one game? Do you think so? I'm asking you. It's an honest question between you and me, everybody. This is just you and me. Nobody else is listening. Do you think that it's possible to have 2 Botus Gambits in a game? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We've been there. We've all been there. Sapnap was there during this game. There was another Botus Gambit. E3 was played, hanging the queen. And now, after queen takes e3, this would have been a fantastic position for white, of course, because, you know, white would just have had a queen for a rook. But, sorry, after rook takes f5, not after queen takes e3. But, unfortunately, Harry, he took on e3, which is a free pawn, but it's just not the queen. And, you know, he let that queen slip away again. So rook c2, you cannot take this queen anymore because of this pin. So rook takes, king went up, rook c8, and now the person who is starting to pin white's pieces is Sapnap, and rook c3 was played, and, you know, this queen can't go anywhere, so there was a takes, and now there's a full queen up for Sapnap. Look at how fast this game turned, everybody. It went from being a fantastic game for Harry, in a split second, it went back to being a fantastic game for Sapnap. So we can just see kind of how it ended. Kept going. We had 2 queens on the board, and then queen f4 was a checkmate. Look at this strange checkmate. This would actually also be a checkmate with 2 bishops, you know? Pretty strange checkmate, but But a very cool game, and I think that those two bonus gambits really spiced up the game, gave Harry some awesome opportunities, which unfortunately he didn't see then, but it was still a great game played by Harry, and you know, this really being the beginning of his chess career, or his chess playing life or whatever, I think it was great. And Sapnap is a lot more experienced. We could see that he was always taking everything that was given to him, but I definitely feel like Harry knew some openings, and maybe in the future we'll see him, you know, we'll see him kind of spicing up his openings again and getting great position against these other players, and it's gonna be really fun to see what happens. I hope that you guys enjoy this video and that you enjoyed seeing me going through these games and just kind of talking about them. I will be posting videos about PogChamps. I'll try to post every single day so that you guys can follow the tournament with me, and once again, this is gonna be all YouTube exclusive content. So if you guys like this video and if you want me to keep on doing these videos, then please go ahead and leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. It would mean the absolute world to me. So thank you so much everyone for watching. Have a wonderful morning, evening, day, whatever it is, wherever you live. Stay happy, stay healthy, smile a lot, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.